Welcome to Beyond the Broadsheet, a Lincoln County news podcast where we sit down with each other and the people of Lincoln County to better understand what's going on in the world around us. We're your hosts. I'm Johnathan Riley, a reporter for the Lincoln County News covering Bristol, Bremen, South Bristol, and Monhegan.
And I'm Molly Reeds, also a reporter for the Lincoln County News. I cover Waldoboro, Jefferson, and Somerville. On this episode, we're going to sit down with Lincoln County News Associate Editor Sherwood Olin to learn some more about this year's Lincoln County magazines and to hear about the life and service of longtime Bristol Fire Chief Ron Pendleton, who passed away on Thursday, August 22nd.
But first, the top stories from the August 29 edition of our paper.
A warehouse on Somerville Road in Jefferson caught fire and burned for about 5 hours last Thursday, August 22nd. The warehouse used to house William Smith Enterprises, but it now has a new owner and was being used to grow cannabis plants at the time it caught fire, which complicated things for the first responders who went to the scene.
The Damerscott downtown prepares for parking lot reconstruction set to begin September 3rd with the arrival of equipment. The project, headed by Crooker Construction of Topsom, includes the installation of a 150,000-gallon underground stormwater retention tank, new storm drain basins, and the renovation of 4 existing drainage pipes.
At the Windsor Fair, Claudia Orff-Reed, a member of the Jefferson Select Board, and her twin sister Claudine Northrup are continuing the legacy of their father, Lincoln Orff, in the roles of superintendent and assistant superintendent of show steers. Lincoln Orff was dedicated to his work at the Windsor Fair until he passed away in 2021 at the age of 90.
In the studio with us today is Sherwood Olin, who was the editor for 17 years at the paper. That means I got it right, folks.
No.
So what's the actual number, Sherwood? How long were you the editor, and how long have you been at the paper?
This time, I've been at the paper for just over 2 years. I was at the paper the first time for a tick under 17 years, and I was the editor for just about 8 years exact.
Wow. That's incredible. So today we have you in the studio to talk about one of your responsibilities as the associate editor, which is the oversight of the magazine, the Lincoln County magazine. So Sherwood, do you put that together?
No, and I've got to give so much credit to our designer, Amber Clark. You know, I don't even want to think about doing this job without her. I give her the materials and we give her the ads, and you just kind of dump it into this black hole. It's just kind of a puddle and a pile, and she turns out something that it's like, did I do that? It's like, wow, you make me look good.
They look incredible. The magazines look great.
She's a wizard.
Really,
she is
very
Amber
dynamic.
Clark, everybody. She is a wizard. Thank you so much for Amber.
Thank you, Amber. So can you tell us a little bit about the magazine and, how many do we put out a year, and what makes this year special?
Oh, that's a very good question. I'm not really sure how detailed to get into the magazines, but real quickly, I left for reasons in 2016, and in 2022, John Roberts, the publisher, reached out to me, and there was some conversations back and forth, and as you know, finding appropriate staffing was an issue, and so they had some holes they needed to fill, and I was certainly amenable to coming back, and part of the reasoning is, with my experience, not only could I assist the current editor, Maya Zeeler, but I could also oversee the production of the magazines and the inserts. So that's my primary function. The magazines itself were started probably 20 odd years ago as a one-man gang by our former think he was a development director named Greg Latimer.
Oh, yeah.
So when I came back in 2022, I inherited magazine operation that was already going. So this is actually my first full year where I designed the magazines, kind of led the editorial output, and put everything together.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm looking at the wall in the studio here. Was that last year?
Yes.
So that's last year. So, because I remember, I think that live from Lincoln County edition had the Griff Braley
Yes.
piece in it,
Yes.
which was, I think, my first piece with the magazines.
Yes.
And so, but before you have this year's, and those, you were at the helm for the whole direction of.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this year's magazines.
Well, we try to, we have 5 magazines that we put out between Memorial Day and Labor Day, and they're roughly themed around outdoors, live in Lincoln County, farm and table, made in Lincoln County, and history. And within those themes, we try to group the stories along another theme. So, in our farm and table, we could theoretically do aquaculture all the way through. We did not actually do that this year, but we did focus a lot on local foods coming around. And I think the Farm and Table magazine, which was the 3rd one we produced this year, is probably my favorite of the bunch, in no small part to Molly's story on the rare pigs run the woods. I thought
Yeah,
that was
Molly.
probably the sweetest. Just generally, I mean, I'd never heard of black pigs before, but
Yeah.
apparently they don't like industrial production, and they're very tasty.
Yeah, both true.
I don't know that, but according to the article,
Thank you,
and
Sherwood.
this lovely farmer, these pair of farmers out in Waldoboro, I think, are bringing the species, almost single-handedly bringing the species back from, I don't know the brink, but certainly they are doing their best to propagate the species.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Molly, do you want to talk a little bit about what it's like working with Sherwood in putting together a piece for the magazine?
Sure, it's exciting. Sherwood comes to the office. Well, I wasn't very far into my time here, and I remember he came in during a staff meeting and was like, "We need magazine stories," and kind of left it at that.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to find either surf or turf. And Johnathan, you ended up taking the surf.
I
half
did
of
take the
that.
surf. That's right, for the farm and table.
That's right,
I did the
right.
surf part of that.
Right.
So I looked all around for surf. First of all, for turf. First of all, Sherwood told me there was a bison somewhere.
There are buffalo. There is actually a buffalo bison operation in Jefferson, I think, that
Yeah.
I thought,
So
hey,
I checked it out. You told me to
Yeah,
go
check it
look
out.
for it, and I looked.
you found the buffalo, right?
I was unsuccessful.
Did you find the
No.
buffalo?
No, and there's.
I swear
tried
to
my
God,
best.
there's buffalo in Jefferson.
So maybe for
That'll
next
be
year's
next
magazine.
Yeah, Finding Buffalo. Yeah.
I believed you, and I looked high and low, and I found no bison. But what I did find were black pigs, which are even more rare, if you'll believe it.
Actually, I do believe it, but
There are black pigs in Jefferson. And so outside of this magazine, the Surf and Turf, you said that you were excited about this one. What is the process of putting those things together? Molly, you just talked about Sherwood came and was like, we need ideas, but is there a vision? It seems like I'm looking at the ones on the table we have here, and they look, I don't want to say more dynamic than the ones behind us, but there's a difference in the energy. And, I just wanted to hear a little bit about your vision for those pieces.
well, to be honest with you, last year there was a bit of a dumpster fire in terms of just time and scheduling, and there were a number of issues that needed to be dealt with. So, for example, Johnathan, I think you had just been hired and had literally just taken your jacket off and sat down on your desk, and I walked up and said, I need a story in 48 hours for the magazine.
Was that the Griff Braley?
That was the Griff Braley one
piece?
that appeared last year.
And shout out to Griff Braley for speaking with me on the phone, and we had a wonderful interview, and I got to learn a lot about him. But you're right, Sherwood. I don't even think my jacket was draped over the back of my chair yet before that.
I'm not even sure the butt had hit the seat, and I was like, "Hey, you're new. You're a writer. I need a story."
You don't look weary yet. You should. You got a spark in your eye.
So, what we try to do with the magazines, and what I've really tried to build on, is getting the reporters who already have a full plate. I mean, you guys know, I mean, it's every week there's a ton of things you need to cover and be involved in. And this is the magazines are an extra thing. And so I really want and aim to have the reporters, the people writing the articles, to be excited about the subject that they're writing about. Once we get the magazines out, we've got these 5 out now. In a couple of weeks, we're going to sit down, we're going to have the team in, and we're going to do a brainstorming session where we say, okay, outdoors, our outdoor magazine, what could we do that's an outdoor theme? And we'll throw out some ideas and go, okay, of these themes, what's really interesting and what can we do for stories on that theme? And it's kind of through a process of elimination, we'll end up with, for our 5 magazines, hopefully we'll end up with 10 or 20 story ideas for each magazine. And hopefully we get reporters going, you know what? I've always wanted to write about Buffalo and Jefferson. I'll take that story. And then they run with it, and I don't see them again until they turn in the story well ahead of deadline.
Always well ahead of deadline.
Always well ahead of deadline.
Always well ahead of deadline.
In this case, I had some stories left over, and we didn't have reporters for them. So I was going, okay, I have ideas or I need ideas from you. And Molly grabbed the Buffalo idea and ran with it, and then she cashed it in for the black pigs.
That's really cool. So I see black pigs, I see oysters, I see history, I see fire. For our listeners, we have quite a decorated table here in the studio.
I also want to mention, I thought Sarah Masters did one of the finest jobs in our history magazine. The one that I was really looking forward to is we came up with a sports theme for our history. We were going to do Lincoln County sports history, and that comes from I interviewed a character of the county, Mia Feltis, who's a hairstylist here in Damascata, and she was a 1,000-point scorer and an all-star basketball center for St. George.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. She had this tremendous basketball career. Well, now she's a hairstylist and a mom, and she kind of, looks like a business owner approaching middle age. But she has this entire background where, she had a shot at going to UMO. And she did play college ball. I thought it'd be a great idea of what about these people that used to play? That are just civilians now. And so that's kind of the birth of the magazine. And Sarah Masters kind of took that and ran with it and produced a story on the history of baseball teams in Lincoln County, going all the way back to the 1800s. And, baseball used to be America's pastime, really. And every team, if you could fit a ball field on it, there would be a ball field and you'd have a team to play on it. Every team, companies had it. It was the thing to do. And I thought Sarah did a fine job exploring that. So we really try to get into Lincoln County.
So that was the most recent magazine?
Yeah, that was the last one. That just came out. In fact, just came off the press this week.
Oh, cool. For our listeners, if you're looking for magazines, Sherwood, tell them where you can find them.
Well, we have back issues here at our office. They will be going online for people who have subscriptions, can get them with their electronic e-edition. So those will be on there. We have back issues here at the office, and they obviously go out with the newspaper when they roll off the press.
Cool. So they can, if they have a subscription, they can go online and they'll be able to see them eventually.
Right.
They're also they aren't quite on newsstands around the county. They're in strategic locations. I'm thinking about Reddy's Underground near one of the doors. They have 2 doors facing Main Street. They have 2 boxes filled with the last 2 issues of the magazine just right there, which is really cool. But it's sort of, that's where I look to the left or wherever, and I see Lincoln County Magazine there. And so it decorates the county in many places.
And they're free.
And they're free.
Yeah, guys, they're free. Go out and get one.
And I just had last night, as a matter of fact, somebody came up to me and was talking about how much they love the magazines and how much they're looking forward to them. And they love what we're doing with the magazines. I've had 3 or 4 of those this summer, and that's, I've had more of those interactions than I did last year. Let's just put it that way.
Well, it sounds like we're growing in the right direction, and I'm excited for next year. And I remember the brainstorming session last year. It was in this room. We put out paper and like we had a timeline drawn out. Like, should it be this? The whole process and production of it is really cool. And what ends up coming out is really fantastic.
Yeah. Getting to the Black Pigs article, that was not on the board.
No.
And it just kind of came out of Molly following her desire. She's got a thing for animals, I think, and she just kind of followed that and produced, I think, one of the finest stories, at least during my tenure, my second tenure here for the magazine.
Thank you, Sherwood.
You're welcome. And also, by the way, since I'm handing out the praise, your aquaculture story featuring Smokey McKean was just outstanding. So, I thought we had a number of strong features in it. I can certainly see some things that I wish I could have done better, but we'll get another shot at it next year,
Sherwood's hard on himself even after more than 20 years.
One of these days I'll get something right. Anyway.
Is that the curse of being a good writer? Is that we just can never appreciate when we write something good? It's always just okay, right? Like, it gets to a point, you're like, that's fine, or it's trash. I'm never like, that was excellent. Sometimes I write sentences that I say to myself, wow, Johnathan, well done.
Well, I'll tell you, and I think I've talked to you about this.
Yeah.
When I was the editor, one of my joys was crafting the editorials. And I tried to write them. I felt a responsibility because you're representing the whole paper and the Roberts family. And, so I'd start on a good week, I'd have the editorial for next week in my head on Wednesday, and I'd turn it around and around and around Thursday, Friday. And it would be the last thing I did. Usually Wednesday morning before we go to press, I would sit down and bang out the editorial.
Nice.
And there were some of them that I really crafted, really put some time in it. And I remember when I was done with it, I was like, all right. All right. And I came back here in 2022, and I've looked up some of those editorials, and they are the worst, most self-absorbed drivel. It just looks like a, first-year college English lit major flexing his muscles, going, "Hey, look, it's disgusting,
amazing,
disgusting." And I remember at the time, it's like, "All right, Sherwood, you really should." No, now it's like, "You pretentious piece."
You're right. So I would love to just see that at some point, whenever you have a second, if you can go and find some of those ones where you're like, this is my English major flexing moment that you look back on.
Man, there's two or three that I could think of. It just that
I would love to just see that.
Yeah. So I guess the lesson there is, especially with what we do, is don't get too important. Don't get too hung up on the words. Get the words on the page, and you can go from there.
Well, it seems as though we've gone from there all summer long and produced 5 really fantastic magazines, in conjunction with, like you were saying, Sherwood, with a full plate of making sure the paper gets out every week as well. So it looks like the magazine has a bright future.
I hope so. I'm excited to see what's going to come about with this brainstorming session we come up that should be doing in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Cool.
And I'd love to get some of these stories started this year, so we're we're well ahead of it for next year. And we did well this year. We made every deadline, but I think we can always improve on what we're doing.
Always.
The mountain with no peak. Sherwood, thanks for being in the studio with us today, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you soon.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. We're back.
And we're back. So on August 22nd, retired Bristol Fire Chief Ron Pendleton passed away. And Sherwood, you had the privilege and also the difficult time of writing what we call a notable death piece this week. So can you tell us a little bit about Ron and what writing this piece was like?
I started at the Lincoln County News the first time in 1999, and Ron Pendleton was the Bristol fire chief at that time. And he was the fire chief the leader for 20 years. He was an assistant fire chief for 27 years before that. And counting up all the years total, he dedicated 70 years of his 85 here on planet Earth to the Bristol Fire and Rescue.
Unbelievable.
And now, granted, the last 5 years, I'm sure he wasn't, as active as he had been, but
Sure.
I'm giving him credit for the full 70. And it's hard to explain his impact. I mean, he was there for so long and he set such an example. And, people, you think about what a fire chief is for a town, the backstop, when the emergency leader sets foot on deck and everybody knows the man in charge who takes care of things is here and we can all take a breath. Ron Pendleton was that. He had that. And all of the Pendletons, they're still down there. Jared and Brad, who are still involved with the fire service. Their oldest brother, Scott, who I think is recently retired and moved back to town now. They're all involved, and they're all like that. They have a command presence, and Ron especially. And over the course of his tenure, I mean, you read, he was a member of the Maine Fire Chiefs Association and served on the governor's panel for this. And I didn't even get all of his awards into the story. I recommend you read his obituary. It was the kind of thing where I had 1,000 words and I hadn't even talked to anybody. Just writing up his career and, just going back through our archives and pulling a few things from here and there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Ron was half of a team. The other half is his wife, Jerry Pendleton. Her father, Ken Sawyer, was a Bristol fire chief for 39 years, Ron, her husband, succeeded and was fire chief for 20 years. The whole Pendleton family is involved in, emergency response work down there being Bristol at the end of the peninsula. Really trying to explain the impact and the kind of person Ron Pendleton was. I would really like to get somebody closer to him to tell you the stories about him, but I can tell you this. I was a young reporter, and I'm showing up on a Bristol fire scene, and I don't know what's what, but I do recognize one of the firefighters, and I just asked him, what's going on?
Yeah.
And he, gives me very briefly. And for the civilians out there, I'll just let you know that that's the kind of thing that I wouldn't put into the story. If the firefighter is saying, oh, there's a car crash down the road, I'm not going to attribute that to that firefighter. I'm going to get that information from the chief, the acting officer.
Right.
So this firefighter was just giving me the little bit of, well, Ron Pendleton called me the next day, later, at some point. In fact, we were here putting the paper together. It was a Tuesday. And he explained to me how communication in his department worked, which was through the chief. And there should be no talking to any other firefighter and no listening to any other firefighter, and no reason any little snot-nosed reporter should be getting into any firefighter. And, the Pendletons they are known for... they can be pushed so far and they get so far, and that'll be about it. And I think for Ron, that was about it.
Wow.
And there were some words.
Sure. Did you learn your lesson?
What?
Did you learn your lesson?
Yeah, I think I represented myself well. It was kind of out of the blue for me. I was very surprised, but once that was said between Ron and I, it never came up again. And I understand that that's the way he led. That if you got in, he led with he was a command person. And if you got out of line, he would let you know. If you weren't doing your duty, he would let you know. But once he did, it was done.
Right.
And just an incredible legacy. You read about what a fire chief is and what a fire chief should be, and
right.
He was the very definition. And
when you were putting this together, you said that you went through the archives and you hadn't even talked to anyone yet. the act of putting this together, did you learn something new about Ron that you didn't know before?
Not really. Not really. Because of his career and who he was very well known, and very well known to me because I covered Bristol when I was a beat reporter.
Yeah.
No, and in fact, I didn't speak to anybody in his family. I did reach out to them and let them know that I was going to be doing something, and I'm hoping to speak to the family. The funeral's coming up, and no, it's just a long, tremendous career. It made me. If I was talking with some friends last night, it made me think. When a figure like, God forbid, Bob Dylan or
Sure.
Mick, one of those guys goes on to their reward. I mean, how do you sum up a career like that? Mick Jagger,
Right.
any of those guys. How do you sum up that kind of a career? I mean, you've got 1,000 words before you even get to what they've been doing the last 2 years. You know?
Right.
It was similar to that. He was just an extraordinary man.
An impossible task to put someone's life into words like that. But
Yeah.
I'm sure as someone that interacted with Ron, going to an event like that will, you start to acknowledge sort of the scope, and even that isn't its entirety, but being there, seeing an entire community arrive for someone who arrived for the entire community.
The Pendleton family, as they all there's always a corner, right? There's always somebody, and the Pendleton family has detractors, and you'll hear the epithet "the perfect Pendletons," and how you always can't, they always have to be there at the scene, and you know what? Yeah. They're always there, and people can sneer at that, but they are there day and night, 3 o'clock in the whatever. They have given everything to that town, led by Ron. So, I can understand, and I myself have said, it's not an emergency in Bristol until you have a Pendleton.
Right.
But that family, Ron, that is the definition of community service. So, and one more thing I'll add, and when I started in 99, I was 33 here in Lincoln County, and everybody running the show, like Ron, was in their 50s and 60s. And now here we are, in fact, 25 years later, and now I'm in my 50s and 60s, and everybody running the show then has now moved off stage, or is getting close to moving off stage, and it's a definite reminder that time is moving on. And I'm not sure I like it all that much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that for you, seeing the evolution of Lincoln County has been an interesting experience, as it has run in tandem with your own evolution, and watching people like Ron, the people who were really foundational and just a big part of that mosaic of the beginning of that experience. I don't even want to say dissipating, because he's still here. I mean, all of his contributions, like we said, we're gonna see the impact is still here, and he is in that way.
And specifically, when he started, it was before they had sophisticated turnout gear. I mean, and they would literally. Jerry Pendleton said when she was a kid and the fire bell would go off, her father was a fire chief at the time, her mother would send her down to the fire station where she would ring the horn, once for Round Pond, twice for New Harbor, so forth and so on. And then she would go out inside the fire station and write on a chalkboard the address of the fire. And the firefighters would drive, right? And that's how word got around. Wow. So now we have...
That's wild.
Yeah. And now we have a mutual aid system. Just for those who don't know, when a fire goes off in any town, there's a number of other surrounding towns that just know that they need to be on duty, ready to supply, ready to provide aid. And so when Bristol rolls out, immediately Bremen, Damascotta, South Bristol know that they need to either go to the scene or whatever. Right. Ron Pendleton led the charge getting that developed.
Wow.
And it was in his, and I don't think he came up with the idea exactly, but getting it implemented here in Lincoln County, he was one of the leaders that, that happened during his career, and it happened in part because men like him reached out to embrace that change.
Wow.
So, he oversaw Bristol from a time when they didn't have running water in 2 of their 3 stations, and didn't even, and the 3rd station was falling around them. And now they have functional fire station. You can at least go to the bathroom in all 3 inside.
At least you can go to the bathroom.
Yeah. And Ron himself said, and I quoted him in the article, that his proudest accomplishment was leaving all 3 stations with heat and running water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's wild. I don't know. That is incredible. And I don't even think that I can fathom the impact.
Well, I'll tell you another story that doesn't come from Ron, but it's a similar firefighter. Ron joined the Bristol Fire Department in 1954. I was talking with the late Newcastle Fire Chief Clayton Huntley years ago. And Clayton was telling me when he was a youngster, and he probably joined after Ron did, the Newcastle department, he and an old veteran went in to do an interior attack. And, Clayton was joking with me, saying at the time you'd show up in a jean jacket and they'd wet you down and send you in, which wasn't far from the truth. But,
right.
So Clayton was a young man, and this old veteran come out of the smoking house, and they're coughing and, and the old veteran there, as they're sitting down, they got black faces, and the old veteran's like, "Oh, that was tough in there, wasn't it, kid?" As he pulls out a butt and lights it up. That was the way things used to be done.
Fighting fire with fire.
Exactly. So that wasn't a Ron Pendleton story, but that was kind of the way fire departments used to do it.
Right. Well, Sherwood, thank you for sharing a little bit of insight into Ron Pendleton and the fire chief and community member that he was. Because as much as, that label fire chief is, like you said, it's like a backbone to the community, and the person who shows up, and the joke running for a while was that it's not an emergency unless the Pendleton's there, looking at it, and it's really cool to get to know him a little bit through your eyes and your lens, and your article I think did a wonderful job illustrating just a small drop in the deep ocean of accomplishment.
And I haven't even talked to his family yet.
Yeah.
Wait till I talk to his family and they tell us all the cute stories about him being grampy and all that stuff, stuff we didn't get. There's another 1,000 words there, and we're not even getting warmed up. And not only was he a fire chief, he was a coach. He brought the Bristol High School boys team within a hoop of the boys championship in 1966, the state title.
Wow.
So he was a coach. He served on the budget committee, and it just goes on and on and on. You look at that and you go, man, I'm wasting my life. Yeah.
Well, certainly not. But, Sherwood, thank you for that. And we will definitely be hearing from you again. And hopefully we can hear a little bit about Ron in the future. Hopefully. And from you after you've talked to some of the family. And if any of the family is listening, our deepest condolences.
Yeah.
This has been Beyond the Broadsheet, a Lincoln County News podcast. Thank you for listening. You can find more from the Lincoln County News online at lcnme.com or on newsstands across the Mid-Coast.
We would like to thank the Maine Independent News Collaboration for their support with this project. And we would also like to thank our listeners and the people of Lincoln County. Without you, there's no us. Until next time.